everyone can join us today. I am Neil Milliken, and I'm joined by Debra and Antonio Santos, my AXSChat colleagues. Also, we have here Magno-Veluz of the Autism Society of the Philippines, and most importantly of all, Rolando Jr. Villamero, who is from GLOBI Inclusion. And it's Rolando's idea to get us all together to celebrate the World Autism Awareness Day and also talk about some key topics. So firstly, we're here to commemorate World Autism Day. We also want to talk about the issues relating to education for children with autism, explore how we might use the visual arts to help promote inclusion of children with autism, and also, finally, and really most importantly as well, launch the Draw Disability book, which has been a long time coming. So I'd like to welcome everyone. So, Narayanan, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Hey!
I thought I'd not say this, but Firefox is at least help here.
Okay, so Narayanan, you just arrived in time. You've been working on Avaz app for a while, and it's an application that enables people with autism who are non-verbal to be able to communicate. From your experiences working for Avaz, how do you observe the changes in education of children with autism these days? What are some of the milestones that you achieved, and what are the successes? And can you talk about some of the challenges that you still face?
Surely. Thanks, Neil. So I think just to give some context, the Avaz journey started almost like 5 to 6 years back when we started making a communication app for people in India. Since there was absolutely nothing that was contextualized for the culture. And what we have observed over the years is something that at least the kind of awareness has definitely increased. And it's not only in India, but also like obviously when we have a lot of people who buy Avaz around the world, and that awareness about a particular technology solution being available has definitely increased. And I kind of correlated directly with the fact that there is an increased like interest in basically educating kids with autism and improving their education as well. So because with any communication app, it helps the child participate in classrooms, which is extremely important for them to like get a good education, so that their participation in the classroom doesn't get is no less than any, as we say, neurotypical kid. So I think just from the fact that there is an increased awareness about technology solutions, that has definitely helped. And the other thing has been that the integration in the classroom. So a lot of teachers, a lot of speech therapists, and special educators are getting more and more interested in integrating these technology solutions. And trust me, it's really hard, right? I guess, Neil, you know very well that as an AT person, it's very hard to integrate technology to make it work in the classroom. You need to get a lot of things together. So that's what I feel that also has started to fall in place. So I'm very optimistic about all of that. And again, there are initiatives from bigger corporates. So something like Apple is trying to get into schools and improve the technology setup in classrooms. There is obviously Microsoft is already there. Google has been trying to provide tablets and Chromebooks. So from my perspective, a lot of like the technology part of the solution, part of the problem is getting solved. And there is a lot of like training for either be it teachers, special educators, paraprofessionals, all that is also happening. So it's definitely looking up. There are certain challenges which we still face, I think, and for me, as I have seen and a lot of stories that I have heard, and something that's kind of true more in India, kind of sadly say that, is that this entire concept of presuming competence. So you need to presume competence. You need to assume that the child is able to participate in classrooms. You believe in the child. You presume he or she is capable of doing it. That presuming of competence is something that we are not there yet. Like, even if people are interested in and they know of a technology solution, but they kind of make it so simple for the child that the child is not able to grow or learn further. They think, oh, you know what, the child is just going to learn, say, these 20 words, and all through their life, this is what the 20 words that they're going to learn. And so there is no gradual improvement for the child. So which comes from a very deep-rooted belief that you just presume that the child is awesome. You teach them, you will be able to. The child will be able to pick up. So there is that assumption of competence in the child,
Okay.
and yeah, I think that's something that we will definitely. We are definitely seeing improvements, and I think any from a milestone and a success point of view, I think that's an important milestone to kind of cross.
Yeah, I think that we are still in large parts of the world faced with the deficit model, where people are assuming that you judge someone based upon what they can't do rather than what they can do.
Exactly.
That will basically change over time. The increase in capabilities of what people can achieve, facilitated by advances in technology, things like Avaz, help move the goalposts as far as what people can achieve with the help of technology. So you can assume greater competence as the capabilities of the technology increase. So these things are never static. With that in mind, Mona, you know, we've mentioned some challenges, but what are your experiences, you know, in terms of how it is in the Philippines, in terms of how children are viewed when it comes to autistic kids, and are they getting the opportunities to be educated amongst their peers, or is it still something that is very separate?
Thanks, Neil. Well, first off, I come from a country that has a very strong autism advocacy community for like 27 years now. Our association was founded 27 years ago, and in that time frame, visual arts has always been a key pillar of our advocacy activities, whether it is a poster making contest or a chalk art competition or an exhibit of oil on canvas work from kids from all over the country. It's always been a key part of what we do. And instead of running through like the things that we do to make sure that that becomes a tool for inclusion, let me tell you why we do it. We feel that visual arts is really an equalizer in the classroom. I think that for kids with autism who are mainstreamed into the educational system, whatever deficits they have in socialization are, they make up for it with that I guess the spatial intelligence and visual acuity. So it's been a great way for kids with autism to actually have more confidence in the classroom. Also, we do believe that engaging them constantly in different art forms, allowing them to to explore media, allowing them to get tutelage so that they can improve their skills, becomes a therapeutic process for them. I think that visual arts becomes a way for persons with autism to know themselves better and to be able to express themselves in a way that maybe different from how we would. I think their deficits when it comes to communication skills does not give them an opportunity to express, or at least for some of them, express profound thought. And this channel, this medium, allows them to do that if they aren't able to do so verbally. And we also feel that if we do this consistently in the classroom, if we make it part and parcel of an individual with autism's classroom experience and educational experience. And I guess by education, it doesn't always have to be in the classroom. We are non-traditional learners after all. It can be a springboard to other things. And it could be a springboard to exploring new media. Like we have a couple of kids who started out in drawing and painting, moving over to photography, moving over to art, which translates to clothing and to shoes. We've had a couple of kids who have moved to sculpture. And there's even this one boy whose artwork, because he focuses on religious art, his artwork was transformed into cathedral windows. So it's this wonderful thing that when you start them early, it can become a livelihood. It can become a vocation. It can be that it's that alley to economic equity, which after all is what they need to say that they are truly included in society.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I know Rolando has a couple of questions for both Mona and Narayanan, so I'll hand over.
Cool. Thank you, Narayanan and Mona, for the very interesting points. I just have a very quick question to, first of all, Mona, and I really, really appreciate the fact that you raised the importance of visual arts in actually including children with autism in the classroom setting. But my question is, how do you challenge this existing culture in the education system where drawing is perceived as a waste of time? You know, like I've been to a lot of schools where every time we expose children to drawings, parents would say, oh, that's just a waste of time. We want children to learn about arithmetic. We want to learn them about reading and writing. You know, this existing traditional perspective of learning, and that seems to be a challenge in how we make use of visual arts in including children with autism. And the second question I'd like to raise to Narayanan is, while it's true that technology can be used as a means for inclusion, I also think that technology has the tendency to be exclusionary, especially to children coming from remote areas. So, I mean, a lot of children still come from far-flung areas, and these children with autism can't access these technologies. So I'm asking, how do we reach out? How do we make use of technology to reach out these children to ensure that, technology is indeed an inclusive tool, not just an exclusionary tool? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Rolando. With regards to the current culture, where at least for the Philippines, parents always chase that diploma, and that's something that we see every day. And I think that we are far enough along our advocacy that we have successfully shown how kids who are not successful in the traditional classroom environment and in the traditional career paths, we have shown that they can be actually very successful in the arts. Like I said, we've had professional artists now, and we support their exhibits. We've auctioned them off. Even in performance art, it actually goes the same way. But showing the parents that these areas and these career paths are actually very will allow their child to be happy and will allow their child to be successful, and it will provide for them financially. I think that's our challenge. We have to show the parents that this is a viable track, and we don't always have to follow that path where everybody else is. is at. Yeah.
Thank you, Mona.
Great. So, Rolando, to answer your question, it's an extremely tough question. Let me put it right at the start itself. So, I do agree that actually I've always had this argument with my wife, saying that she keeps saying that, oh, you know what, technology is so exclusionary for a lot of kids who come from remote areas. So it is kind of true, and I think there are a lot of technology solutions and technology innovations that are happening that is trying to bridge that gap. So I'll just give you an example wherein there are now products out there which kind of do like a remote-based therapy for children. So imagine there is a kid who's in an extremely far remote area, and they're able to connect, say, via phone, and you're able to do some sort of therapy over the phone. So that's one example. But I think for me, the bigger example has been how in the communication space, there used to be these giant devices that were $5,000, 5,000 US dollars, 7,000 US dollars devices that were the only options available in the market till the iPads came out. So now, if you see, basically there have been companies that have just like gone out of business because of the disruption that the iPad and the apps on the iPad have brought out. So, if not today, but probably 5 years down the line, this gap is going to keep on decreasing, and like it has happened in the past, and I think it will happen again. So that's I think is we are as kind of engineers or innovators, we are working towards bridging that gap. It's not only making it exclusionary, but also trying to bridge that gap. And one last thing is that there are, like, for at least I know in India, but this is not necessarily with autism or communication. At least in India, there are government grants for buying, say, something like a smart cane for visually impaired people or blind people. So there are government funds that help make technology more accessible to the less privileged section of the society.
So I totally agree with you. I think that the cost of technology is plummeting. We're seeing sub $100 smartphones now, mainly Android devices, but perfectly capable. So again, the appification, the app economy is doing exactly what you said. It's eating up the old assistive tech, high-end, expensive technology business, and replacing it with something that is much more democratic and affordable. So I'm in full agreement with you, and I think that will, along with government grants and everything else, helps level the playing field somewhat. But let's draw back into the core theme here, and that's how art and disability intersect. One of the instrumental campaigns around advocacy is for disability is Draw Disability. If you look at some of the galleries there, you'll see a number of pictures that are depicting autism, what it's like to be autistic, from art from an autistic point of view, etc. So I'm interested to know, Ajit and Mona, what are your thoughts and sentiments about these drawings, and how can we use these drawings and art from people who are autistic to advocate more for the rights of those with autism in both an education environment and then later on, as we've talked about before, the opportunities in the workplace?
Thanks, Neil. Well, first off, I love the idea of Draw Disability. I think it is a perfect platform for individuals with autism to actually explore their disability and find in themselves what their feelings are, what their thoughts are really on, you know, who they are. It brings to the fore that concept of self-awareness and acceptance. So once a person, I feel, appreciates their gifts and challenges that comes with a disability, it is that moment when they become true self-advocates, and they become advocates not just for themselves but also for their fellows with autism and other disabilities. So I think it's a perfect way to get the individual to wrap their head around who they are, and it is with that self-knowledge that they can advocate in society for their fellows.
Great answer.
I think this initiative is pretty awesome because as Mona was saying, the entire self-advocacy point of things here is something very important. And also, if you notice that there is a lot of depth in these paintings, right? And these are kids, who probably are like way beyond, like they are able to think with that kind of depth. And I think it, as an adult, as adults who are not believing in kids and not, as I was saying, presuming competence, this is like a huge, like a shining light, right? This tells them that, look, we are much more than what you think we can do. We can have these thoughts. We do believe in ourselves. So this whole like going through the entire set of paintings and the drawings that I was when I was seeing those things, this is the one thing that came out, was that there is so much depth in what the kids have actually expressed, and it goes to show that we should not be undermining their capability at all.
Great, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Debra because Deborah's stayed quiet for now, and so I'll pass the baton.
Well, thank you, Neil. It's very exciting to be part of this, and I've got my Twitter feed up on the background. So, in case anyone wants to ask us questions, if you'll use the hashtag #DrawDisability, we will monitor. At least I'll monitor Twitter, and I'm sure others can monitor other social media platforms. But it's also very exciting to see this global group. I know I'm joining from Virginia. We have Antonio, who's the mastermind behind all the engineering, joining from Ireland. Neil's joining from England. We have Rolando, I believe, joining from Montreal. Mona's in the Philippines, and Narayanan is joining us from India, even though, excuse me for butchering your name, but sorry about that. But
No
very,
problem.
very exciting to see, all of us coming together. And I know AXSChat is very, very proud to be part of this. So, Rolando, why don't you tell us more about the Draw Disability and the gallery, and actually how people can find out how to participate, how to book. Tell us more about the Draw Disability effort, Twitter feed, to see if I can bring others into it.
Thank you, Debra. So my role now is to actually, I would say, formally launch the hashtag Draw Disability. But before doing that, I'd like to emphasize what this campaign was all about, and it's hashtag Draw Disability to make it more viral on Twitter. But this initiative was actually launched by the UN Secretary General Global Education First Initiative in cooperation with GLOBI, which is Global Observatory for Inclusion, and the Jeffy Youth Advocacy Group. And I'm so happy that Mona and Narayanan mentioned one of the most important objectives of this campaign is to make children themselves global citizens. One of the most important successes of Draw Disability was that it served as a bridge for children to make a dialogue with world leaders, which means that one of the most concrete activities we did within the Draw Disability campaign was that we were bringing these drawings to major education events in the world. One was the World Education Forum in ancient Republic of Korea last year, where literally world leaders were able to see and view the drawings of these children and reflected on how global leaders can actually prioritize disability as a cross-cutting issue in all different issues in the society. And we also brought these drawings in New York during the Conference of State Parties of the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So, you know, this very important objective of making this campaign as a platform for children to be global citizens is one of the most important things that we're trying to have as a campaign. And also would like to emphasize that simply this campaign was made to raise the awareness of children and young people about the issue of disability and inclusion, which in a lot of contexts, especially in developing contexts, is still a challenge, especially with the prevailing negative attitude about disability. So that's what the Draw Disability campaign is all about. It was officially closed as a campaign last year in New York during the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. But moving forward, what we're doing now is we're exploring the campaign to be more country-based. So we're trying to bring exhibitions to different countries. And one of the events we're eyeing now is the Pacific Rim Disability Conference in Hawaii. And also there's one upcoming event in Australia. So we're trying to make Draw Disability campaign more country-based and more grassroots. Now, I would say that one of the greatest things that this campaign has made is the Draw Disability book, which generally documents the successes, the milestones, and the interesting stories that were involved in this campaign. And at this moment, I'm very pleased to inform everyone from different parts of the world that the Draw Disability book is now available. The book is available. We'll be sharing the links through this platform later on. It's available online, and we're also happy that the book is accessible to persons with disabilities. So we have the DAISY versions, we have the HTML versions, and all of the accessible versions for our readers with disabilities. And also we have printed copies for the Draw Disability book, which will be distributed to our partners, and which will be used as a fundraising opportunity for GLOBI to raise funds to promote this campaign. So we will be very happy for people to have a look at this book and look at the drawings and reflect on them and learn about disability and inclusion. I think that's all what I have now at the moment, Debra.
So Rolando, I am very proud to have a daughter with Down syndrome, but my daughter, we're seeing more of this in the Down syndrome community, that some of our children also have autism. And so some of the Down syndrome conferences I've spoken at, and like the last year, we will actually have a track for Down syndrome autism. So I know that we're celebrating World Autism Awareness Day. We celebrated a couple of days ago, and that's why we're doing this event. But it is interesting to note, at least to me as a parent of an adult child with Down syndrome that also has autism, she's also on the spectrum, that how these all come together. And I know that personally with my daughter, art has been a very, very important aspect of who she is. And she's a very creative young lady, and she's always been drawn to art. And even though she's 28 years old, she drew a piece for Draw Disability. But I think it's very important to note that even though we're talking about autism, that this really, as you said, Rolando, this is about making sure that all children with disabilities are truly included. And I think art's a very important way to do that. So I would be curious, like some of the things that we're talking about, are y'all seeing that? Mona, are you seeing more of a crossover between the different disabilities and the work that you're doing in the Philippines?
Well, actually, Debra, we are seeing exactly the same thing, and it's not only a crossover between Down syndrome and autism, autism and ADHD, autism and other conditions have overlapped. We've had somebody with autism who is also blind, somebody with autism who also is deaf. So our advocacy is actually built around also including all disabilities in the work that we do. I think it is important to be accepting also of the reality that these conditions do coexist, and it's also I think a courtesy for us to understand other disabilities. We can't just stay within the autism realm and just talk about autism. I think as a larger community, groups who advocate for different disabilities actually become a stronger voice, whether in our countries or in our regions or in the world, if we actually speak as as one. And it is in with that kind of unity, with that kind of spirit, that I think we are going to make an impact in when we talk to our global leaders.
I am curious, Mona. Have you seen the autism and like dyslexia? I know Neil he himself has dyslexia and is a very big advocate and proponent of making sure that people with dyslexia are included. But are you seeing any of that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. We've had in our community, because we are 10,000 members strong, and it appeared several times. We've had a combination of autism and dyslexia, apraxia, and dyscalculia. All of these conditions happen, in several cases. We've also had opposition and defiance disorder coupled with autism. Some of the psychosocial disabilities are also becoming more visible now with our community, with the awareness and with that level of understanding. So yeah, we're still seeing a lot of that in our community.
Narayanan, I see that we're getting tweets about this, so a lot of congratulations. Draw Disability has been a big success, so it's really cool to see everybody joining. But tell us more about the application that you did. I know that a lot of the efforts were to make sure that people with autism are part of education, and it ties directly into what we're doing with Draw Disability, but how does it tie into some of these other communities that Mona was mentioning?
Yeah, so what we started off with was designing a communication app initially for children with autism. But what we realized was that when you look at any person, like I would say, be it a child or an adult, if they basically face problems in communication, if they're unable to express themselves, so that was the kind of that was the kind of problem that we wanted to design for. Like we wanted to pick up, irrespective of any label as you would want to be. It's like whether if you're under the autism spectrum or if you're a child with cerebral palsy. The idea was to enable them to communicate, to express themselves, and be able to participate in be it in classrooms or in general participate with their family. So I think that's been our core design problem that we wanted to solve, was to ensure that there is for them to, as we say, we give them a voice to speak for themselves. So be it with their communication device, be it a child, be it an adult. So that's how we look at it.
Sorry, I had muted myself. Rolando, I know that on your Twitter feed that you have a really interesting drawing that a Chinese student did expressing what autism meant to them, and I was just wondering if you could take a little time to talk a little bit more about the artwork, because I'm looking on your Twitter feed and it's a really cool picture.
Yeah, I think I'd like to emphasize, Debra, that if you look at the themes of the drawings of children and young people from around the world, there's always a combination of both a positive and a negative perspective about disability. So some children draw about the struggles, the everyday struggles of children with disabilities. There was one drawing in the gallery where you can see a child with autism being in captivity. So being in captivity and the rest of the world were colorful, and this child with autism was in captivity. So that actually exemplifies and emphasizes the day-to-day struggles of children with autism. But also you can also see theme of optimism and hope. If you look at the drawing on my Twitter account of this this child with all the chains, you know. It's through love and passion of the society that releases these children from captivity to the social model of disability, where society reaches out to these children and make the society more inclusive to their needs. And that's the time when they have the opportunity to actually be able to participate in these discussions. And I wanna emphasize, Debra, as well, that, you know, as what I've said earlier, Draw Disability, even if it was formally closed last December, is still very keen to exploring at other initiatives on the ground. So definitely we're bringing in this campaign to different parts of the world, especially in remote communities where we can continuously educate people about disability and inclusion. I have a question though from my Twitter. My friend sent this Twitter question, Debra. I don't know if you can allow me, but this question is either raised to Mona or Ajit about. So my friend asked about the issue of identity first language versus person first language of addressing children with autism. My friend is very particular about what is. I mean, from your own experiences, she's interested to know, like, which of the ways in addressing persons with disabilities is more appropriate. Like, you know, you have the autistic versus with autism, which is a long-standing argument, but my friend just want to know what Mona and Ajit or other panelists have to say about this concept.
If I may.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mona.
All right. This is actually a part of our sensitivity training pack. We in the Autism Society of the Philippines do support the United Nations standard when it comes to addressing persons with disabilities. So we use in all of our formal communication person first. However, we as parents, you know, we are also parents in the association. We have actually no qualms about using disability first. Also, I mean, my son has autism, and it is perfectly fine when I refer to him as my autistic son. I think that's accurate, as well as you know, it carries no no ill meaning or ill will. However, it is when, at least I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the Philippines, autistic has actually become a slur, and it is in that context that, you know, that term becomes wrong, and we constantly educate people here in the Philippines about using that term and reclaiming that term autistic as a very powerful and positive thing. We are always communicating that autistic can mean intelligent, autistic can mean talented, autistic can mean passionate. So it shouldn't always be associated with those negative terms. And I think for our children, we want them to understand and embrace their disability as something which comes with both gifts and challenges. That's all for me.
Well said. Neil, I know. Yeah, I know you wanted to make Neil wanted to make a point as well.
I'll unmute myself. That's better. I was trying to do it from the microphone. So I think really, because there are both differences within the communities in local communities and also internationally, it's always safest to ask the person how they wish to be referred to. However, and that's great for one-to-one conversation. Obviously, when you're referring to groups of individuals, it becomes much more tricky. And again, you know, dealing with most disabilities, you would go with person first. I know that absolutely a lot of people, particularly the self-advocacy movement, are trying to reclaim the word, are going with disability identity first because they feel that autism defines them. and that's cool, and that's a good thing, because absolutely, you know, it's down to the individual to make their choices. So I think it's being mindful and being sensitive that individuals have different views about how they want to be addressed, and so there is no one right way. You're always going to. One thing I've learned with AXSChat and with it being an international community, whatever we say, we're going to please some people and upset others.
Yeah.
Just part of being a leader.
Yeah.
So, and it's been very interesting, as being in the United States, it's been very interesting, these topics on people first language and what words work and what words don't work. And sometimes we're not very nice to each other in these conversations. But you know, I know that I don't want my daughter defined, you know, just as one thing. I always tell people when I'm speaking on this topic that just because you have a disability, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you can't add value to society. And we see people with autism adding great value to the workforce all over the world. So I think, you know, allowing people to tap into their creativeness and their innovation and the things that they bring to the table, I think is very powerful. So Rolando, I know we're looking at some of the amazing pictures that are part of Draw Disabilities. Do you mind talking a little bit more about this?
Wait a minute. Yeah, definitely. So in the book, Debra, so I mean, people can definitely access the drawings of the Draw Disability. It's either through the gallery, so you can visit GLOBI-observatory.org, and there's a Draw Disability button there. And as what I've said earlier, we're going to release the official link of the book, where people can actually look at the book in itself in its soft form, and also the accessible versions of the book. So, oh, thank you. That's amazing. I love the screen. So the book actually contains the drawings and the description. So if not all drawings were able to make it, because we have to make sure that, you know, we're able to make a more of a condensed book for children's drawings, and we've only included like 100 drawings in this book. And one of the important aspects of the book, Debra, is also the activities that we've been doing for Draw Disability. So I remember going to one of the most remote areas in the Philippines, like in the hinterlands, bringing the concept of disability. And one of my experiences is that every time children hear about the word, we call it kapansanan in Filipino. Every time children hear about the word disability, they always associate it with the word abnormal, you know, helplessness, you know, like uselessness. And if you ask these children why they think about that, they always say, oh, that's what I hear from my parents. So it's also about role modeling. When you talk about advocacy work, you know, it's also about role modeling on how adults can actually be role models for children to actually promote the rights of persons with disabilities. And that's where this whole process. So that's all I can say about the book, Debra. And definitely, we're very willing to distribute, especially the soft copies. And if anyone is interested to have hard copies with them of this book, we're very willing to work with you very closely on this, and bring more advocacy and awareness to the community level.
Yes, and we're seeing a lot of it. We're seeing great activity out on Twitter. Mainly, we're just getting lots of congratulations from the work that all of you are doing, very supportive comments. So you had mentioned before, Rolando, that one thing y'all would be interested in doing at GLOBI and with the Draw Disability is get more engaged with other activities. So I know you're engaged with the amazing people here, you know, but what else? You know, what are you thinking about the future, and how can we help, and, you know, how can we tie it to what Mona's doing and what, you know, they're doing over, you know, with the work that Narayanan and Ajit.
Debra?
Yes.
So I'd like to emphasize that one of the I think one of the challenges with global campaigns is that they have the tendency to be very on the top. You know, when you talk about like global campaigns, we talk about, you know, the whole international community. And there's a tendency for these campaigns to miss out the grassroots initiatives and the grassroots context. So what we have at the moment, as what I have been saying, is that how do we bring in these drawings and these exhibitions? So we have cubes, by the way. We already have a set of exhibitions where we can bring to different countries. How do we bring in these drawings to the community level? And I'm happy that Mona is interested to work with us and bringing this to the Philippines. Is that how can we bring this to schools? You know, how can we bring this to the remotest areas in certain countries and educate people about disability and inclusion? That will be one of the things that we want to know. It's also about partnership with different organizations. I don't know if Avaz is keen at kind of, because we also have networks in India. And, you know, we have thousands of drawings from Indian children, by the way, for this campaign.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we can mobilize these children themselves to actually make more difference there. That would be awesome. And in terms of like AXSChat, Debra, I think it's really, social media helps a lot, and we really appreciate all the support that you have given to this campaign, which has been very helpful in reaching out to different networks, to different people from around the world.
You know,
So just to add, I'm sorry, just to add that Rolando, we do have I think we have a lot of schools in India with whom we have contacts, as well as other organizations that work in this area, and we would love to spread the word to them about raw disability, so we could potentially help you get introduced to those people, and you can take the movement forward much more strongly in India, and maybe even focus towards the south of India where we are, so we'll get to meet you as well. So that's definitely something that we can do, and even the kind of even we have some. So we have a lot of social media presence in the sense of around the world. So we have partners around the world as well, so we can introduce you to other folks as well. So we have like partners in Denmark and France, and they might be interested to continue this awesome movement forward with you, rather.
Thank you, Narayanan. That's well taken. We'll definitely send an email after this Google Hangout.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Avaz is also in the United States. That's how we first heard about him. So they're just the work that they're doing is very powerful, and it's really changing a lot of people's lives. One thing that when my daughter was younger and she was going into the middle school in the United States, I was really worried that she would get bullied. I was really worried about bullying, and I know that when we were doing Draw Disabilities, some of the drawings addressed bullying, but I was just wondering if the panel would like to talk a little bit about that. I will say that I was very pleasantly surprised. My daughter, she had very little bullying. As a matter of fact, my son, who does not have a disability, my son was bullied more than my daughter was, and so I like to think that, you know, children are evolving. I'm very impressed with the young people of today. But I was just wondering if the panel would like to talk a little bit about that theme, because it is a problem that we see all over the world. Mona, you want to say something about that?
Well, unfortunately, we do see a lot of bullying in the Philippines as well. My son, who is now 23, all throughout middle school and high school, he did experience bullying from the neurotypical kids, from actual physical bullying to kind of getting his lunch money, that kind of thing. And we do continue to hear more about bullying from all over our community. But I guess the wonderful thing and the recent development here in the country is the legislation actually passed an anti-bullying law, which is implemented in schools. The Department of Education is tasked with monitoring the cases of bullying, and they are mandated to report from a down to the barangay level or to the district level, if I guess that would be a good analogy for the U.S. On the incidences of bullying and how the children are being bullied, whether it's physical, whether it's verbal, and all of that, all of those little demarcations. So that said, I mean, with the law, it has given us something to fall back on if we need assistance. But there is also that, I think, increased awareness among kids, and many kids, considering that there is an increased incidence of autism in the society, we see that more kids have actually taken up the yoke of advocating for individuals with disabilities, because they themselves are affected, or their families are affected by autism and other disabilities. With the increased incidence comes, I guess, more advocates for us, and that actually helps us with the dissemination of information. The families who live with autism help us inspire others to be advocates for our kids.
Very, very good point, Mona. Rolando, do you want to address that? Because I know that we saw some of the artwork for Draw Disability specifically on that topic of bullying.
The law actually is very, very specific. It, however, does not provide any penal clause for offenders. It does give schools the responsibility to address the situation. So it will be the school that will be penalized in case the incidences are not resolved. So that's an interesting,
yeah, that's a good
point of view.
And you know, Mona, since I know that Draw Disability was going into the schools, talking to the children, you know, right there, I think that's an opportunity for the schools to bring in, you know, Draw Disability, so that's, you know, one way that they can try to address the bullying.
Yeah, and we actually do go into the schools to talk about autism specifically and how it feels like, and I think this program, Draw Disability, is going to be an excellent way to reinforce the work that we do, and I'm very excited about bringing more of Draw Disability to the communities we serve here in the Philippines.
I think artwork is just so important. I know we only have 5 more minutes, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn the floor over to Rolando to really, you know, talk a little bit more about, you know, where are we going with Draw Disability? How do people, you know, how can people, you know, learn more, get the book, you know, and also if any of our other speakers would like to say final words as well, we can turn the floor over to them. So Rolando, I'll turn the floor over to you, and then you might want to, you know, turn it over to our other speakers briefly as well.
Definitely, Debra. First of all, I want to thank AXSChat, Neil, Antonio, and Debra for having been very supportive. You're amazing. Thank you very much for the support. We really appreciate it. You know, as I continue looking at the photos and the gallery for Draw Disability, there's one very important reflection I have moving forward is the fact that if you look at the drawings, still, I would say like more than 80% of the drawings still talk about physical disability. You know, like children draw about a child without legs, child in a wheelchair, you know. But I've been reflecting on the fact that, you know, our children still miss this opportunity to fully understand that disability can be both seen and unseen. And I think moving forward, that's one of the things that we need to emphasize in our advocacy work, is to educate our children and the whole society of the importance of really identifying and having this clear understanding that disability can also be unseen. I mean, you don't have to be a wheelchair user for you to be identified as a person with disability. And that's one thing that we want to raise. But you know, the challenge is it's really challenging to teach children this very abstract idea sometimes, you know. So it takes a lot of innovation to come up with a strategy in the school level on how we can make a lesson plan, for example, of a campaign, awareness campaign, where children can fully grasp this idea of unseen disability, from autism to learning disability, which can be very complicated for a lot of children. And one thing that I'd like to emphasize, Debra, is in order to address this issue of really educating the community about unseen disability, we'll definitely be bringing and continuing the campaign for Draw Disability and making use of this material and platform to make a greater difference in raising more awareness about the issue of disability and inclusion. And that would be my idea. And again, it's also a reflection of really a concerted effort of different organizations working together on how we can improve the advocacy work that we do for children with disabilities, and in this case, children with autism. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for everybody that joined today. We're very proud to be part of this at the AXSChat team. We do our AXSChat every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 8 p.m. UK time. So thank you, Mona. Thank you, Rolando, Antonio, Neil, and Narayanan, and Avaz for being here and helping us celebrate World Autism Acceptance Day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good job.